Hello, folks. This is Molly Gordon, and it's 3 minutes before the hour. And shortly, we'll be welcoming Dr. Ken Manning for the, what is this? This month is August Wholeness Hangout. I'm just going to do a little technical adjustment there, get my camera set, and welcome everybody. Oh, if you're watching the recording, you get to hear this rambling prelude and watch me rubbing my nose. It doesn't get a lot better than that. I see some new faces and some familiar names. Welcome, everybody. Good to have you here. Oh, Lordy. Where are you in the world, Mark or Paul?
I'm in Walnut. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I'm in Walnut Creek, California, which is the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah, I know Walnut Creek. Great. Welcome.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
And Joel. Hey, Joel.
Hi, Molly. How are you? Hi, Paul.
Hey, Joel. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I miss you, Joel.
I miss you terribly, too. How's everything going?
Everything's going very well. We'll need to connect.
I know it's so long since we fjorded together.
I know. It's been a long, long time since we fjorded. Good gracious. Yeah, I have to go to Norway to see this guy.
I miss Joel too.
Yeah, hi, Dominic.
Dominic's name said hello.
Yes.
Hi, Dominic.
The name that speaks. Yay. And Verity, nice to meet you. Hi. And Natalia and Tanya, good to have you guys on the call.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, hi there.
Yay, and the star of our show today.
Right place.
This is the right place.
Okay, good. Do I need my earphones? Would that be better?
It might be. It's optional, but sometimes it cuts down on background noise and reverb. Hello, Kate. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
There we go.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, actually, that is better.
That's a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
Good.
Joel?
That's
Hi, Ty.
Joel there in the shadows.
Yeah, I see that. You can't hide from me, Joel. I know that face wherever I see it.
I often feel your presence when I least expect it.
In the shadows?
At night in the dark, walking down the street in Santa Monica.
That's great. Well, welcome everyone. I'm delighted to see some familiar faces and some new faces. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm Molly Gordon, and my guest for today's Wholeness Hangout is Dr. Ken Manning, familiar to a lot of you and very possibly new to some of you. So I'm excited on both of those counts. Ken, would you like me to read a bio of you, or would you like to introduce yourself? What's your preference?
I hate introducing myself, so why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I'll switch screens here.
Because I never know what people want to hear.
Yeah, well, I don't know what they want to hear either, but I'll just take a flyer at this.
Why don't we
That's
ask
true.
them?
What would you like to know about Dr. Ken Manning before? You can use the chat. It's a small enough group. You can also speak up. If a couple people speak at once, I'll play traffic cop. I have no trouble with that. So I know I came across Ken's work, I don't know, 6 years ago maybe. And I knew your work, Ken, mostly by reputation. And then when your book, Insight Principles, came out, was that 2 years ago?
3.
Last year? 3.
I think it was 3, yeah.
Yeah. That was the first time I got a real sense of your voice and of what you and your partners, Robin and Sandy, bring to the world of coaching and consulting in the 3 principles. And one of the things that I appreciate about Ken's work is what I would call the pragmatism, the commitment to serving clients by helping them get where they want to go, get the kinds of results they want to get in the world, see results in the world, and his commitment to really listening to where they're coming from, and then bringing, and Ken, feel free throughout to correct my misunderstandings, bringing the insights of the three principles to them and letting them offering those insights as a pathway in to the client's own better functioning, better answers, deeper understanding. So there's something very, for me, Ken, very pragmatic about your work, and an honoring that people are up to what they're up to in the world, and that what they're up to, I don't know if it needs to be respected, but it's really helpful to respect what people are up to in the world and to facilitate that. And sometimes I think that can get missed in our spiritual and psychological pursuits. We get off here in our ideas about what people ought to be up to. And Ken has been innovating ways to bring the insight principles into the corporate world since 1999 with Robin Charbot, his partner. And you guys are going to be doing a seminar for coaches and consultants in September?
Yeah, in Boston.
In Boston.
September 8th through 10th.
Okay. And there's a link to that on the event page where presumably you got into this Hangout. I participated, or participated's the wrong word. I watched a previous seminar that they did last year or the year before, I think, and got a tremendous amount of value out of it. They live streamed it and I watched the recordings. So I can highly recommend this, both for deepening your own understanding of the three principles, but also as a coach, practitioner, consultant, however you style yourself, helping you get a better grip on how to actually serve people with these insights and not just preach or lecture or teach to them. Kate.
Hello. So I've been working as a psychotherapist. I'm now wanting to work in a sort of three principles informed way with clients. I just know there's no option anymore. So this really interesting, Ken, to hear about your kind of work now with the corporate sphere, because that's exactly the world I'd like to get involved in, just because it's a world I don't know too much about, and I feel like there's probably a fair amount of need there. And I suppose my sort of, maybe there's no easy answer. I'm just kind of wondering how you start. I know that's a big question, but I mean, in the room, I'm probably having all these, unfortunate thoughts about perhaps meeting people that might have a slightly defensive reaction to specifically talking about the principles, describing the principles. And I've heard other practitioners sort of say, oh, I don't necessarily talk about the principles. I just remain very open and very present and lead them to a conversation about the power of thought and the nature of thought. And I just wondered if you had anything to say about that.
Well, it's a huge topic. So what specifically are you wondering about in terms of what you need to do?
Well, so I can feel a little bit evangelical. I think Molly used the word evangelical. And I don't want to scare people off, I suppose. I don't want to scare clients off. Yeah, that's the worry, I guess.
Well, my rule of thumb is to not scare clients off. So you're on the right track.
Okay, good.
There's the conceptual framework called the three principles.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are the three principles.
Right.
People are not interested in buying a conceptual framework.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think clients have asked me, working in psychotherapy, clients do sometimes want to know about the framework, but actually they're kind of few and far between. And I guess if people ask you, then you tell them.
Well, most people are not psychologically oriented. And those that and then within those people who are more psychologically oriented in terms of their interest, not that many of them are interested in the science of it.
Mm.
So maybe 1% or 3% of people would really be interested in learning about what's the science behind what you're helping them with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
you're quite right.
yeah.
So if
and then there's something more powerful to consider. That the three principles are always there, and they've always been there inside of everybody. And it's not the principles, it's the realizations of how the principles operate inside themselves that matters. So you're actually not helping people by teaching them the three principles. You're helping people by having them realize inside themselves something that they've always known, but just never had a way of pointing themselves toward it in a way that would be helping them. It's the realization in the moment that's the only thing that helps a person. The intellectual understanding is a nice thing to have if you're interested in it, but most people aren't. Most people want the energy and the freedom that comes from realizing the truth of things. That's what you're in the business of. You're in the business of helping people realize the truth of things. But it's only in the moment that they realize it that it matters. Everything else is just branding and conceptualizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
So you have to ask you, then the game, when you're going into the business world or with any kind of client, is to get yourself out of the way enough to really absorb them, know them inside yourself until you can see how to help them realize what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you say and what you teach doesn't matter. What matters is that they realize it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I think it's really helpful. I think I'm so keen to get started in this next bit of work that the thinking keeps ramping up. And as soon as I'm hearing you talk, I'm just like, oh yeah, right. Like it's not down to me to, like you said, this stuff is pre-existing, will exist after us. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, now here's the last thing, so if you're relatively new to the principles, meaning like the last few years,
Yeah.
you're still on a honeymoon.
Yeah.
And the honeymoon's going to wear off.
Yeah.
Now, you get evangelical and proselytizing during the honeymoon phase, but it turns people off. Now, the reason that it turns people off is you're not in the moment experiencing the benefits of realizing. You're just remembering how good it felt when you did. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so you can go a long time remembering how good it felt when you liberated yourself, but that's not the real thing.
No, that's not it.
It's a memory.
Yeah.
So what you end up doing is proselytizing a memory rather than trying to bring the real deal to people.
Yeah.
Now, bringing the real deal to people is complicated.
You're absolutely right. I'm just I tried to do it to someone today, and it just no.
Right.
Not a client, a friend, but yeah, get yourself out of the way. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, the joy of it is huge. So you don't want to lose the joy of it. But the joy is not personal. It's not yours. It's what comes through you. Right?
Absolutely.
And it comes through you as a function of your realization.
Yeah. And even that, it's just lovely to be reminded. Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and come to one of your seminars. You doing any in the UK?
Yeah, we have one in November.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Can I find it on that page that Molly was
Go
talking about?
to insightprinciplesInstitute.com
Okay. Thank you.
and look up Invisible Power. That's the name of the program. It's going to be at Hendon Hall in London.
That's 20 minutes from where I live. That's really funny. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Wow. Talk about the right time.
Cool.
Right.
So Molly, what should we talk about? What would be fun?
I'm I'm loving the honeymoon, and what you're doing is remembering, not experiencing. I'm still kind of grooving on that. And what comes to me might be helpful or interesting to talk about is the process. I don't know if it's the process, but how you talk to clients. Let me just back up. What came to me as I was listening to you and Kate is that when I started sharing the principles, or thinking I wanted to share the principles, I thought I needed to show people something. And I would hear them talking and I would listen for what they weren't getting instead of listening for where they were. And as you were talking, I thought, it's so different when I'm willing to enter the forest with my clients or prospective clients and go get lost with them, or at least at the risk of getting lost with them. Entering their world, understanding how they're making sense of things, really getting a feel for how they're doing life or how they're doing their business. And then from there, wondering with them what getting found might be. I'm using lost and found as a metaphor for having or not having insight. And let me just mute this for a second. That the difference is that then we are really keying our teaching or our coaching or our consulting to a real experience that the client is having, rather than trying to teach insights that we've had in the past to a client who's in a different place right now. Does that make sense to you?
I think so. I'm not sure where you're trying to go with this.
I don't know that I was trying to go anywhere at all. So much as just offering that idea of rather than entering into an engagement with a client with the idea that I'm going to show them something. For me, there's something about being willing to get lost with them first.
Yeah, it's like you're getting on a train,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't know where the train is going.
Exactly.
But you're on the train and you've left the station,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't know where the train is going.
Mm-hmm. And which to me is a very different thing from trying to sell a client a train ticket to a station that I've already selected.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're getting on the train and we want to show them how wonderful it is to be fully human, driving their train where they want to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, the question that occurs to me right now is, what have you seen about yourself as a human being, as a practitioner, consultant, whatever you call yourself, over the last 18 years of bringing this work to corporations?
Nothing.
Nothing. Not a damn thing. This is a growth-free zone.
That's right. I got into the principles to get away from myself.
Oh, I love that. I do that as often as possible.
I don't think we have enough time for me to even read the index on that, the answer to
Okay.
that question.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been interested in my own spiritual development.
Mm-hmm.
So, 18, 25 years of that is hard to summarize.
Sure. Well, perhaps if we narrow the frame a little bit, and please, anyone, feel free to ask a question either out loud or use the participant panel to raise your hand or ask a question in the chat. All three ways work. What's one thing that comes to mind right now that you've learned about yourself in terms of relating to clients? Or listening to clients?
Well, there's a really big difference between being in service to the client and being in service to anything else, either myself, my business, the principals, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Being in service to the client has a different feeling to it. And I've gotten to really appreciate and enjoy that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's subtle. It's a subtle feeling. But it's rich. And it produces the best results.
And how are you assessing that it produces the best results?
There's no cleanup. There's little confusion. I don't feel any leftovers after the encounters. And the conversations and the progress with the client seems to go all a lot better.
Okay. And by cleanup or leftovers, I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
Say the wrong thing, feel like I was coming from the wrong place, need to apologize, need to make up for it, need to do better next time.
Yeah. Okay. And
we're a danger to ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
At any moment, if we're in the wrong frame of mind. It's the human condition.
Right. And this feeling of being in service to the client is I've heard many practitioners say that their primary purpose is to be in service of the principles. And you're saying something different here.
Yeah, we're not in service of the principles. We're in service of our clients.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried being in service to the principles at the beginning of my time with the principles, and it wasn't a healthy approach. It didn't work out very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a lot of people out there trying to promulgate the principles in the world by being principles centric.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's an effective strategy. So we're client centric. And we know that the principles are the best thing that's come along to help people have really successful lives and successful businesses in a certain realm of coaching or psychological conversation and training. But we're not there to sell the principles. We're there to help the clients in what they want to accomplish because we're on their train. We're we don't want them to get on our train. We want to get on their train with them.
Mm-hmm.
Dominic has a question.
Okay, Dominic, go for it. Thank you.
Hi, Ken. How are you?
Good. How are you? Nice to see you,
Great.
Dominic.
Yeah. Good to see you again too, because you were I did Super Coach Academy, and you had done one of the sessions with that, and is very interested in the program that you're offering as well. So I'm an executive coach, and I've been for about 8 or 9 years. Most of the work is in corporations, and 3 principles I came across 2 or 3 years ago. And where the immediate impact has been, and it's kind of the easiest place that it's impacted is in the one-to-one coaching. So because as my grounding has shifted, I hear different things from the client, and so then just the way those conversations go, I'm kind of pointing to different things, or it's from where I'm grounded. I'm not necessarily lost in the story and the place that they go in. So that's been very useful, very helpful in the direct one-to-one coaching. But I do 2 other things. I train managers to develop coaching skills. And so I do a training program where I train managers to be more coaches than bosses. And then the other thing I do is team coaching as well, where I'll work with a team instead of just individuals. And I don't know, I haven't, necessarily thought about it much, but I don't know that the principles has kind of oozed into those 2 other areas that I do as much as it has in the one-to-one. And my mindset is still one of, if I go into an organization and I am training managers to coach, that I will speak to them about what coaching is and offer a model, a conversational model that they can use. And we will talk about skills like listening and all of that. So, I haven't necessarily been too concerned about it, because I figure if the principles, if I remain grounded in the principles, then my own common sense will guide me in terms of what I do. But I just wonder if you have any comments about that, because I am clear that I offer processes, I offer techniques and tips and advice on if you're going to coach an employee, how you would approach it, a sort of a frame of mind to use, like all of those things, right? Which I also realize is kind of is different than where the principles would be at. So I'd appreciate any comments or observations about that, or maybe any experience you had with that in the beginning.
Yeah, I'd say there are 2 levels of your own engagement with the principles as a professional coach or trainer. One is, one level would be integrating your knowledge of the principles into other types of conversations that are common sense. So, for example, you're teaching managers to listen to their clients, listen to their direct reports really well, right? Well, it's really good for managers to know that their thinking is getting in the way of their listening. Right, and it's really good for them to know that if they were to really hear what is going on with their people, they would get insights that would help them manage really well. So this is sort of, the common sense level of using the principles in coaching or training. And you could integrate them into, just about any healthy, intelligent framework. It could be, performance review, or, how do you fire somebody, or how do you onboard somebody? I mean, there's a lot of common sense, innate health, basic understanding of thought that you can bring into that. So it's infinite. There's no end to how many ways you can use it. So that's one level. A deeper level, or a more comprehensive level, is one in which you realize that the paradigm or the framework of living is either outside in or inside out. You know what I mean by that, Dominic?
Yes.
Okay, now,
Yeah.
if you really see that thought is the creator of experience, if you really see that the human experience is generated and catalyzed by the mental dynamic happening inside the mind at every moment, then you see that people are living in sort of the movie theater of their own perceptions. And at the moment that a person realizes that that's the case, it changes the game. It's a game changer. I don't know if this happened to you, but it happens for me. When I realize, oh, this is a psychological process I'm living in, I'm not affected by the content of my movies. I'm curious about what's being generated in my human experience. Now, in that space of curiosity and inner balance, a whole host of different psychological processes and feelings engage from the inside out. And the way I interact with the world and respond to the world, and interact with people and respond to people, and think about my life and my future, it's like a different game. You with me, Dominic?
Yeah.
Okay, now, it's a different enterprise to have people realize that than just use a little bit of the common sense that comes from the principles.
Mm-hmm.
That's the game that we like to play when we go into businesses. We want people to see that.
Yeah, got it.
Because we know that if that happens individually or in a team or in an organization, the whole culture is going to change from the inside out without us having to massage the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the speed at which they're going to transform and get better business results is like lightning compared to anything else we've ever seen.
Yeah. Now, that what I hear in that, as I apply it to the things that I'm doing, is, so that's a different sale. That's something different that you sell up front. And
That's
so when what it is that I've sold is that, your managers can be more effective in working with their people, then I'm not sure I have a listening in the room for how to transform my experience of reality such that I resolve this problem with my employees and every other problem in my life, right? So that, yeah. So I think it's also around how it's presented and what you've sold up front, what the agreement is with the client.
Well, now here's the thing, Dominic. So I don't know if this is useful or not, but before you sell it, you want to see if you can pull it off.
Or whether I want to sell it. I guess.
Well, believe me, if you think you can pull it off, you're going to want to sell it.
Yes.
Because there's nothing like it. All right?
Yeah.
So, sell what you're selling. I want managers, I'm going to get your managers to be much better at managing their people. But sell it as a 2 or 3 day workshop. And then go in and teach them the inside out nature of things and see what happens. Because if they get it and they go back somewhat transformed and they manage completely differently, then you'll see the data. You'll see the evidence of what you're doing and how it hits. And until you have some of that under your belt, I wouldn't try and sell it.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, and I think for me it becomes where I get less specific, or how do I in a training course? How do I move off the context with which we're all in the room together and start speaking about the nature of thought, mind, and consciousness, and how that's impacting what's going on with employees? Like, I end up doing this on things like brain science, but I very quickly have to reapply to the topic we're talking about, right? So that I will talk about how does brain science impact what's going on in a coaching conversation. But I have a short leash for how long anyone will listen to that before they can see how this is applicable to exactly the topic that they're in the room for, right? So I keep having to, ensure it links and all of that to that. So.
Well, there's always a degree of courage, chutzpah, and feeling like you're jumping off a cliff. I've been doing this for 10 years now. I've done this with thousands of people. I'm doing it next week, and I'm sure it's going to feel like I'm jumping off a cliff again. But it's a different game. The world operates in an outside-in paradigm. And we've been gifted by seeing that it doesn't actually work that way. Now, it takes a while to help other people realize that it doesn't really work that way. Now, at some point, it's going to start to occur to you that you want people to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't be a chicken.
Yeah, got it.
Go for it. I mean, what do you I know you have to make your money, and you have to keep your business going, and you can't lose all your customers in the process, and you can't piss people off. I understand that. But at some point, you're going to want to set up the conditions where you're experimenting, trying to get across to people that there's something really different available in life than coping with an outside-in framework for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And unless you show people that it really is an inside game, you're going to leave them coping with their reactivity for the rest of their lives. I'm personally not satisfied with doing that anymore. But for a long time I did. So, for the first, X number of years, I tried to do the common sense thing of trying to show people how innate health exists behind our thinking, and how if we understand thought, we'll be less caught up in our thinking, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I did that too. But at a certain point, you realize it doesn't really make that much difference.
Yeah.
Until people really get the deeper meaning of the principles. And then you start having a few experiences of having people see the deeper freedom that's available to them with a paradigm shift. It starts to be meaningful to you that you deliver that.
Yeah. And so far that's occurred on, in one-to-one coaching, and it has not to the same extent penetrated into those other areas of training and team coaching. And I'm certainly interested. I keep looking in the direction, and so it's kind of where my question came from. But I see how it has easily flowed into the individual conversations. So it's impacted me as a coach.
Well, it's taken Robin and I about 10 years to sort of figure out reliably how do we do it. Now that's how we do it. I'm not saying how anybody should do it. It's reliably how we do it.
Yeah.
So we've identified that there are 9 areas of skill that we use with every group. And, you know, since we've sort of articulated that for ourselves, we've decided that, you know, we feel comfortable starting to share with people what we do. So that's what our training programs are about how to do it in the training and in the team or in the team environment. How do you set it up, deliver it, and then follow it up and keep it going long enough for it to get embedded in their system? So,
yeah, I'm looking at the October dates in Boston, so I hope I can make that work. Yeah, would be very useful from what I've seen.
Love to have you.
Yeah, great.
Well, it's at the beginning of September, actually.
Oh, okay. I'll go back and see those ones. For some reason, I thought I was looking at ones further out. Okay, I'll go double check it.
We had to cancel the advanced training in September, but we do the basic training. The basic training that we do, we're not really in the business of doing public programs because we're so busy in the corporate side. But people have asked us to train them in how we do the training in the business world. So we started running training programs for consultants. And they had so many questions about what we do, what we actually do. What we decided to do was actually run for the public the program that we do in businesses for teams.
Mm.
So that's what's coming up in September, so that people can actually see it. And we have people come and do that before they do our advanced training now, because it answers 100 questions about what we do and why we do it. So you would see that at this program in September. And then in November, we have our next advanced program in London.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, Molly, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Thank you. Feel free to, I was thanking Dominic and you, and inviting anyone else with a question to ask it in the chat, or raise your hand in the participant panel, or just start speaking. It seems to me, would you talk a little bit about the kinds of conversations you have with prospective clients and how that conversation affects the sale? And I'm not asking about how you sell your work so much as, from what I've heard from you and Robin, there's a way that you listen to prospective clients to find out what they want that has to do with this client-centric way you work. And I wonder if you can say more about how being client-centric expresses itself from the very beginning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I also noticed there's a chat question. But
oh, thank you.
I don't know if that's...
when you bring from Susan, when you bring the principles into the corporate world, is the client the company looking to achieve their goals, or looking beyond the group to the actual individuals within the corporation? Susan, would you like to come off mute and maybe ask that?
Sure, okay. I can give an example if you like.
That might help.
Hello, Ken. Thank you for
Susan.
sharing your expertise.
Sure.
I work with people with physical health issues and disabilities, and often work within organizations, such as, for example, something like the March of Dimes. And often I find situations where I might be hired by the company or organization, and they have a set of specific things they're looking for, and yet the clients under them have a very different. So there's like two sets of goals, and so I find sometimes that it's difficult to bring forward the listening. I guess like you're calling it the open listening, which I think is a great way to put it, and how to bring them together so that the listening is, open on both sides. If you get where I'm going there.
I think I understand. Tell me if I get this right. So sometimes it looks like the company that's hired you is your client and they have certain outcomes they're looking for. But when you actually talk to the people,
Yeah.
they have different competing outcomes that they're looking for.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
then the struggle is, obviously the organization is the one paying me, but yet I'm actually trying to do the best for the clients, if you like, under their own umbrella.
Yeah. Well, it's tricky.
Yeah, it is. Because I often find that one exercise that I've done that has proved to be a little bit helpful, and I designed this before I became more aware of the principles, was I would create a situation where they would each have to play different roles. So a client, for example, would now have to be the executive director of the group. So just to emphasize or to help bring to their attention that the thinking is coming from different set of goals and outcomes and that sort of thing, and sometimes then they will get, they have to pay attention to different things, but it's still coming more from the outside in, what I'm realizing now that I know principles. And to a degree, it was a little effective, but not so much.
Well,
so I guess what I'm wondering is how to flip that more. I really get the inside out concept, if you like, but I don't know how to get that across to these two groups that are not well aligned to begin with.
Well, I find that being open and honest with everybody is really important. So if, I try to get clear from the beginning if the people paying me have a specific outcome they're hiring me to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And if so, I let that be known to whoever I'm working with. So if a company tells me, you need to straighten out this guy because he's in danger of losing his job if he doesn't clean up his act, I'll say to him right away, well, do I have freedom to tell the person that? Do they know? Because I don't want to work with them unless I can tell them that that they're on the line.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I'm hired by a company and then I get in with the client and the client tells me they're looking to get out of the company.
Mm-hmm.
I have to assess, well, is this honest or not? And I'll get the client and their boss together in the room and say, okay, what are we trying to accomplish here? And are we all in alignment? So it's all on the table.
So that's more like a facilitation, mediation almost.
Yeah, before the work gets started, because I don't want to do work that's not. If I can't really go for the result, it's not going to feel right. So
yeah, well, that's been my experience. Sometimes I feel a little bit at odds with the actual person, that organization that's paying me. You know, I might be more aligned with what the other clients are wanting to get across. So it does sort of lean into the mediation work. But I'm just wondering how to really integrate the inside out way of thinking, or, you know, just presenting that in a way that might be meaningful to both the groups that are kind of at odds.
Well, if people are at odds and they both get settled down,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do certainly agree with the calming down as a good starting point. Oh, did we lose Ken?
I think we lost the connection.
Ah, we may have lost Ken. I trust that he will find his way back. That was funny.
Yeah. Well, I guess, you know, my question was a bit tricky there.
Well, that's perfectly okay, Susan. I'm glad you asked it, and yeah, I'm glad you asked.
Can I also comment? I like your
Certainly.
question too, Susan, because that's often well, that is so important, right? When because if like, who's the client? Is the client the person you're working with? Is the client? What I found, because that all comes up in coaching as well, and what I found is it's perfect because it raises the misalignment between the individual and the organization. And so my start of that becomes adding value from that, showing them that and getting them to align. The other useful thing I found with that is it's not my job to get it integrated and aligned, because I'm not working there. I'm not working in that organization. So it's not my job at all. So, but between the two of them, they do need some kind of an alignment, and I can support them to get aligned. But yeah, so anyway, I love your question.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
sorry, my battery ran out on the computer.
Oh, glad to have you back. Any other comments you want to make about Susan's question, or
No, it sounds like Dominic covered it, so that's really great.
Dominic,
nice going, Dominic.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right. And Tanya, I will look that link up for you. And meanwhile, any other questions for Ken? What's popping? What are you seeing, or what are you wondering about?
Molly, I liked your question. I would love him to go to that.
Okay. Which was something like, do you remember, Joanne?
Well, I think it was something like, how do you bring them on? How is not the selling, but the conversation? Yeah.
How does being client-centric shape your very first conversation? Shape your interaction from the very first conversation?
Well, I have no idea what is going on with the client. And I have no idea what will be useful. I mean, half the time we go in to see clients, what we have to offer isn't what they need. So we end up, thanking them for the meeting and enjoying getting to know them and saying goodbye. Because we're not the right people to help them out. They need an accountant, or they need to fire a few people before they can use us, or who knows what it is. Or they need to create an HR department that works better. They need to hire a real HR professional, and then we'll come in. I mean, I don't know. We don't know what we're walking into. So That's one thing. The other thing I'd say is I've developed a great respect for the process of insight. And that is that I never know what it's going to look to me like that I have to offer. I never know what it's going to look like to me that will be useful to the client. So until I get in there and I start listening and learning what's going on, I actually don't know what I'm going to see, either in terms of what they need or what I can do to help. So it never looks to me like I'm bringing the principles into a client. And then I'm always surprised to realize, oh, the principles would really help this client. Honestly, I know what, it's one of my gifts in life is to be able to help people realize the principles in themselves. It's one of my gifts. But I never know when or how or what that's going to look like. And it's always delightful to discover what that's going to look like. So I have great respect for the fact that if there's something to be offered that I have to offer, I will see it. But I don't have to remember it going in. I just have a lot of respect for the fact that I've developed some competence that I'm bringing with me, and it will show up when it needs to show up. And before that, I'm just going to meet some people and see what train they're on. It's like going to the movies. You never quite know what the movie is going to be like, even if you've seen the trailer. And, you know, you got to wait a few minutes before, you know, the movie starts to really get into the movie. Well, that's kind of what I see. It's like going into clients. You don't really know what the movie is going to be like or what you're going to have to offer. It's sort of like going out for dinner. You kind of know you're going for Chinese food, but you don't know what it's going to taste like till it gets in your mouth.
Does that make sense and land, Joanne?
Yeah, I mean, I really like that, you know, what Ken said about insight and really having a great respect and appreciation for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in our business, that respect is the main thing we are trying to deliver to our clients. I mean, it's easy to spend a couple of days to teach the principles and have people have all these insights. But we want people living in the faith that insight will happen as needed and have them looking toward the living fact of insight as a way of life. That's what we're trying to deliver. If we know that if we get people in that frame of mind, they'll be successful whatever they try to do.
Ken, where are you based in the, oh, that's, you're in the Boston area, right?
Outside of Boston in a town called Sudbury.
Yeah, that's right. On the East Coast. And will your, I put links to both the training in Lexington in September and the advanced practitioner trainings in the chat. I didn't look to see if you're doing live stream for those or if those are only on site or how those are working.
September is only on site. We're going to do live streaming in November in London.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? We've got about 3 minutes left. What's cooking? You know, when I listen to you, Ken, talk about being client-centric, what happens for me is being client-centric and principle-centric seem almost to merge. It's like in being client-centric, putting them first and listening to them, I don't quite know how to articulate it, but it becomes almost a false distinction. As if the client is an expression, if the principles are at work everywhere all the time, then there's no reason not to be client-centric when you're talking to a human being. It's like if the principles are working all the time in every way, there's no reason for me to put the principles between me and my husband when we're having a conversation. Like, he doesn't have to see anything about the principles before I can talk to him. There's just a way that I'm getting a feel for how truly valuing where the client is and where they're coming from and getting on that train with them creates a context for insight, which is all about the principles. Again, I'm rambling and stuttering, but I'm seeing almost a false polarization of where you center yourself, whether it's in the principles or your client.
Well, like I said at the beginning, I think I said this at the beginning, there's the conceptual framework of the principles.
Yes.
And then there's the principles.
The fact of the principles, yeah. Yeah.
Most people go in with the conceptual framework as part of their brand, and they're trying to sell themselves. That's tricky.
Mm-hmm.
So, we understand the principles. Robin and I in our company, we understand the principles, and we know that understanding the principles is valuable. But if somebody just lost their mother and they're grieving, and they need compassion and just somebody to hold their hand, I mean, we're going to do that.
Sure. Yeah.
If 6 months later they're still dwelling on it, then we'll want to teach them the principles.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Super. Any last words?
Tanya had a chat question.
Yeah.
What was it?
Actually, I saw she'd actually had sent it to me privately, which was where are you based, and the links to the advanced practitioner training. So I sent those.
She says, is the tailored mentoring program only for those who have completed your advanced practitioner training? The answer is
I've just been reading your website. I've just actually reopened your book as well in Kindle. I read that about 2 years ago when I first got introduced to the principles. But from your website, it looks as though the tailored mentoring program, you would expect people to do invisible power and then the advanced practitioner before considering a tailored mentoring program. Am I correct?
It's a logical sequence because 90% of what you'd want in a mentoring program, you'd get from those first two programs.
Okay. Hold on, I got to mute myself. The dog's about to bark big time.
Okay, thanks, Tanya. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Ken, very much for being here.
It's a pleasure.
So appreciated it. And Mary Schilling is going to be my guest next month in September. I'll send an email out shortly. We're going to talk about money. And she and I have two diametrically opposed business models. She's all about helping women see ways to charge more, make more money, price like a girl, in her words. And I'm exploring a gift ecology, and we're both coming at it from the context of the three principles. So it promises to be pretty interesting, because on the surface it looks like we're up to two different things, and we don't think we are. So we'll see what that's all about. Yeah.
Well, thanks, everybody. Great to meet you all.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Take
Thank
care
you.
all. Bye-bye.